As always, we're using written content to kind of fuel our conversation. We are still in Think and Grow Rich, chapter 12, and the power of the subconscious mind. Man, some great stuff in here. I love how it keeps tying back to previous content now. And I love even more when you guys lead the conversation. So, what do you have from this chapter, Miss Alicia? Microphone hot for a reason.
Yeah. So, at the very beginning, first page of this chapter, it reminds us that the subconscious mind consists of every impulse or thought through the five senses. It's classified and recorded into the subconscious. Okay. Then it says you can voluntarily plant in your subconscious mind any plan, but the subconscious acts first on the dominating desires that have been mixed with emotion, feeling, and faith. So you can't, I guess that's why it's so important in chapter 2 to write the statement, say it with feeling and faith, because you can't fake that. Your subconscious knows if you mean it or not. And so meaning it really implants it there, and it's going to act first, and your impulse to act through your subconscious will be to act on those actual desires. So if you don't really mean it, that you want that goal, then you're not going to act on it. It's going to take more work to force yourself to do it because you don't really believe you can achieve it.
Yeah, I love this conversation regarding the power of language, especially with ourselves. And I always use this that you're bringing up right here, Alicia, as the bow and arrow analogy. The word you're using when you're writing out chapter 2 is the arrow. The emotion is the bow. Okay, those two together are extremely powerful. And you're right, it's a trifecta because it's the words, it's the emotion, and the faith. You've got to just know you stay time on task over time, no matter what, it's going to happen. And we keep telling you guys that time and time again. Julianne, I see you, then Carrie, then Don Hobbs.
Yeah, just piggybacking on what Alicia was saying. I mean, as you were reading it, I was like, oh, yes, I love that part. That was highlighted in my book too, girl. We got good taste. Hey, so yeah, one of the things that really, really stuck out in my mind was that you have to accept this as a reality. You have to accept what he's saying as a reality. You can't just read this as mamby-pamby. You have to accept it. And by accepting it, it means like at the deepest level. And I think one of the things I've seen from multiple authors and presenters is if you fail, it says the subconscious mind will not remain idle. If you fail to plant the desires in your subconscious mind, it will feed upon the thoughts which reach it as a result of your neglect. So, I mean, I think Client has even said it before, when you don't make a decision, that is making a decision. Because if you don't make a decision to clear a path and make a decision and set a goal and write down the dang thing, then you know what? That is a decision. You're allowing your mind to absorb whatever else is around it, whatever is presenting feeling, whatever energy is around you. You're allowing that to permeate. If you don't build, and he goes into that in another paragraph, you don't build that wall of positive protection.
Yeah, even in that same section, he wrote, about the 7 major positive emotions and the 7 negative, and we see those actually written out, and I know some of you guys will get into them. What I want to play with, though, is this concept, this sentence: the negative voluntarily injects themselves into the thought impulses, which ensure passage into the subconscious mind. The positives must be injected through the principle of autosuggestion into the thought impulses. So as we all experience, the negative is going to happen automatically. and you're going to process those, and they're going to be part of the norm, which is why we see so much of that permeating our culture. Yet these positive influences that if we run them through chapter 2, we run them through the auto suggestion, we continue to focus on them, all of a sudden that will become the dominant muscle, and that will be the default position. Before we were recording today, Ann and I were talking about this concept of enthusiasm and being one of those things that she's one of those that's just how she shows up, man, for anything, on fire. And I know, Carrie, you're on fire as well. You are number 2 up. Then shaking her head, no, she went, you just doused that fire, Russ. Don Hobbs, were you adding to the conversation? Man, I'm finding these mics that were hot, and then
I can always add to the conversation, but I was not intending to.
Well, hey, when you're hot, you're hot. So we're ready for you if you are.
All right. So this subject obviously is big, and Julianne, there she is. Julianne was talking about that if you don't make a decision, that's a decision. Guys, the subconscious is driving everything. It's automatically. It's the, your body functions are all operating under the subconscious, and the habit called life is all under the subconscious. Mm-hmm. That's the part we forget, is that it's not like let's engage it or whatever. It's automatically. It's unfortunately the opposite of automagically, but it is automatically happening, right? What we want to do, and Rush, you hit it right on, is we want to just keep reframing and continuing to pour in what we see for our lives, what we want for our lives, what we have decided is our life, the conscious part, until that becomes the unconscious and it just runs on autopilot. And then life, whether it's the healthy body or the healthy mind or the great business or whatever, is automatically happening. And that's where we're creating. We are creating along with our creator. I'm not taking that away from God, but I'm saying that we are creating. We're on the earthly plane. We are the ones that are in the physical form. We are the ones who are creating, and we're doing it through what we've programmed, or we're allowing what's been programmed to run us, right? So I think we've got that conscious choice, and that's the beauty of this book. This is really a journey into, this is kind of early days thought too, by the way. Don't forget when this was written. Kind of fun to see what this guy was saying and what he was grabbing from these incredible leaders around the world, around the country. He wasn't traveling worldwide, but he was traveling all over with the biggest minds in the world. So anyway, that's my thought.
Well, your guys' attitude and your energy, as Don is pointing out, are pure choices every single time. So when you tell me you don't have the attitude to do something or the energy to do something, you're making a conscious choice in the moment. So going back to Ed Milet, one more, the power of one more. That's a big piece of this. When that negative is showing up, plug in one more positive attitude, energy, choice, action, emotion, whatever it is, lean into it. Celeste, I see you. Alicia, you're going to be next up, though Ann was before you all. She was hot and ready to go. So Ann, you're up.
There you go. Yes. So he says, forgive me if this is rough. It's kind of transcribed. You can't completely control this process, but you can condition yourself to come up with more and better ideas, basically by utilizing it. It's a fact that traumatic experiences, which create strongly planted ideas, can influence the way that a person thinks or acts. And if then it's true, by intentionally using all of your efforts to powerfully plant in your subconscious, you should be able to create what would amount to good within, I'm going to paraphrase, within that traumatic experience that will influence the way that you live through this, exactly how, and this is how you develop what Hill calls a money consciousness. That, and I feel like, okay, so I'm not going to get into the trauma. That's a whole big can of worms, but speaking within like the bad things, right? Like the business failure, the bad year, the bad marriage, those things that they're there is plenty going on within that that we can translate through a lens that helps us see it as my next success, right? We can look at Edison with all of his failures, right? We can look at Einstein with, don't worry about your problems, trust me, mine are bigger than yours. We all have those things that knock us down. And then how we rise is to make a choice to rise above it. And how we evolve is to have a choice in how we think about it and change our entire viewpoint on ourselves within that experience.
A big chunk of that too, Ann, is the language we use. And so I just, whenever anyone's using the word bad, I want to work on changing that language because that's a judgment word. Good and bad are judgment. It just occurred. It didn't work out. So one of my personal favorites instead of failure is feedback. Okay, we got feedback that that's not the way we're going to have a relationship. We got feedback that that's not going to be the way we lead gen. We got feedback that something's not working and I don't know what that is. Let's go ask a coach. You got Don right here for marketing, which is secondarily to prospecting. We all know that. So you've got me for prospecting. And guys, you can ask the question. So if it's not working, you're getting feedback that it's not working that way, come ask for help. All right.
I'm going to jump in here and wrap up.
Wrap it up. I love it, Ann.
Triggered. So one of my biggest pet peeves is the idea of a broken family, or, oh gosh, I'm sorry that your small business didn't work out, or gosh, it really stinks that your marriage failed, right? Oh, that relationship failed. No, like I didn't, but I ran a restaurant for 5 years. We closed it. That's not a failure. That's 5 years of me doing something I wanted to do. Or you had a marriage or a relationship and it ended. Those were years where you were connected, bonded, and learning together. And when you decide to end it because it's not productive or moving forward, it's not broken. It's not a failure. It's just a step in our journey and a step in our evolution.
Absolutely. Just feedback. So Alicia and then Celeste.
So I just really liked this poem in here from Ella Wheeler Wilcox. And especially, just the very first line, got me. You can never tell what a thought will do in bringing you hate or love. Just that right there by itself, a thought being powerful enough to bring you hate or love. I just never really thought about that. Yeah. So that kind of like weighed on me. And I don't know, just kind of, I think everything is starting to pull together, especially from this book. Okay. So things are starting to pull together that I'm actually going, oh, okay. I kind of get it now. And it talks about all your thought impulses, all thought impulses that are intended for transmutation into their physical equivalent and voluntary planted in the subconscious mind must pass through the imagination and be mixed with faith. The mixing of faith with a plan or purpose intended for submission to the subconscious mind may be done only through the imagination. So I've always had the imagination, but I've never had intention behind the imagination. And I've never had an imagination for like actually putting it for the future and making a long-term plan and coming up with things that can actually get me there. I always thought the future, other than going to college, the future just kind of happens. You make that normal plan of I'm going to go to college, I'm going to do this job, but that was the extent of my plan. The end.
Yeah. No
backups for if it doesn't work out or when life happens, and life happens.
or also maybe no bigger. Think about that.
No bigger plan for sure.
Yeah. Now I appreciate that you started with Ella Wheeler Wilcox because Celeste, Kim, Caesar, Justin. I've got another quote from Ella Wheeler Wilcox that I would expect every single one of you to repeat with me in the moment. There is no chance, no destiny, no fate that can circumvent, hinder, or control the firm resolve of my determined soul.
Determined soul. Yeah.
That was actually Ella Wheeler Wilcox who wrote that.
I didn't
So
know
you guys might want to look it up, write it down. It's a hell of an intention to have on your list as maybe part of your daily internal conversation. There is no chance, no destiny, no fate that can circumvent, hinder, or control the firm resolve of my determined soul. Hoo-yah. So
I love
was-
that.
I think it was Celeste. The floor is yours, my dear.
I'm going back to what Don was talking about earlier, and it in my mind, it was letting my mind wander to familiar thoughts that it takes 21 days to build new habits. And I'm positive that everyone has a number that is, oh, it's not 21, it's 60, whatever it is, there's a number. That's not the most important part. The most important part is to create habits. What can you do that you put into place systems that will keep you to doing those habits? And you could use your phone, setting up alarms, getting up first thing in the morning. What are you doing ahead of that? Are you putting aside your clothing, your shoes? No excuses. In my head, that's what I'm thinking. And then, I'm feeling like I'm building up on this pyramid to say, you're choosing to make good choices. Same thing with our businesses. What is our choice? Well, what are our choices? Above that is you have to start with a plan, because we've talked about, if you don't have a plan, you don't have a rudder. And when Russ just mentioned about feedback, that's part of the rudder system. You're doing your thing, but are you in your feedback? Are you going in the right direction? And then one of the last things I thought of was willing to stay the course, even when the will is weak. Comes to, what is your why? And we have so much confusion, at least I feel. I have confusion in my why. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to get that book. It starts with why. I think that's the name of it. Am I correct? And then
I believe so. And I think it
Yes, it is.
is Simon Sinek, isn't it?
It's Simon Sinek, yeah.
And Alicia, Alicia said she read the phrasing, "You never can tell what a thought will do in bringing you hate or love. For thoughts are things, and their airy wings are swifter than carrier doves." When she was reading that, I thought to myself, it comes down to courage. And you referenced this, when you have a failure, it isn't a failure. It's a marker. In a way, we could say that's a feedback of this isn't working. It's okay that it's not working. Do you have the courage to say, I'm done, I'm good, I can find another path now? So all of this stuff, like today, for some reason, I'm just listening to all of you and going, this is a real good chapter for all of us. That's all I have to say on this.
Yeah. Well, and the other intriguing part that I want to throw in here in the moment, Celeste, because it's something you started with. Just like I talked to Anne about when she was talking bad judgment word, you said, am I making good decisions? Instead of good, guys, here's what I want you to look at. Am I making goal achieving decisions? When it comes to your health, I made a great decision yesterday. It was really good to have a piece of chocolate cake that was brought in my household. This morning, Mr. Scale told me that it was not a goal achieving decision. So I just want to lean on that. Is it taking you off where you want to go or pushing you toward want to go? Miss Julianne.
Okay. Yes, as we're talking about conscious and subconscious, and it takes me into what the author is talking about, as well as, you know, many other presenters, so far as the power of the subconscious mind. I see that the next chapter is actually called The Brain, so it might go into it more there. I'm not sure. But the subconscious mind that we're feeding, conscious, like, okay, Mr. Milet talks about the difference between a habit and a standard. A habit is something that we do like without thinking about it, without intention. The standard is something that we intentionally set, right? And so with intention, it means that you can keep the rudder going in the direction that you want. Once you let something become like an unconscious habit that is only fed by your subconscious programming, ooh, you put yourself at risk, you know? And so the author says that there we go. Prayer and meditation. I use those words very interchangeably because they're in the same state of mind for me for the most part. And sometimes I'm very conscientious, like very conscious when I'm praying, when it's utterances and just discussions with God. But meditation, I'm bringing myself into that point where the author even talks about it being the direct path to the infinite intelligence. So if you are an observing person, you must have noticed that people only resort to prayer after everything else has failed. This is when they're in the sinking ship. This is it, it's a rough position to be in, and resorting to prayer when things have failed, most likely, unless they've been a part of this mastermind, and they're in a negative state of thought, unfortunately. And then they wonder why they didn't get what they wanted, what they deeply desired. Because there was so much, I mean, it's hard, you know, it's so hard to be positive, Polly, when you find out somebody has cancer, you know, and you get negative and you're fearful. He says also in the thing, fear and faith make poor bedfellows. You cannot come in expecting to build on faith when you are filled with fear, because you know what? Fear is deeper embedded if you have not conditioned yourself. Our brain is meant to like function off of to help us survive, and fear is a survival tactic. But unfortunately, it has become a norm for a lot of people. And so I challenge people, and I don't know how other people think about that, is you can't have faith and fear at the same time. And so it has to be with intention, because if you allow it just to happen haphazardly, it's more than likely going to be more influenced by your subconscious mind, which has been programmed already, and versus your conscious mind, which is where your intentions lie.
You know, your conversation on something as extreme as cancer and the ability to maintain these positive emotions. In 1980, what was the sophistication of our medical community, of the medical world? How good was stuff in the way of what they could solve, the problems they could figure out? There was a really good life insurance salesman by the name of Morris Goodman. And Morris did extremely well. He was a big Zig Ziglar follower. He did so well, he bought himself an airplane and then unfortunately landed it incorrectly. There is a movie out there as well as a book called The Miracle Man. He broke his first and second vertical vertebrae. He was left with the inability to control any single bodily function from his neck down in that time period. He couldn't speak, he couldn't swallow, and yet he continued to process in his mind that this was solvable, that this was going to get fixed, that this was going to get figured out. And in watching his story, as he communicated through blinking, as he worked on getting control of his own lungs, which the doctors told him he couldn't, the nurses said he couldn't. When he started speaking and they told him he wasn't going to be able to, yet he could. And he started eating when they said he was never going to be able, he could. And then he told the doctor, and the doctor said, what's your goal, Morris? And it was, I am going to walk out of this hospital on my own 2 feet. And there were moments of despair, moments of discouragement. In fact, one of the quotes from the movie, which is a Zig Ziglar quote, discouragement is a cancer that eats at the soul. And those moments happened, yet he worked consciously to reprogram his subconscious, and that subconscious, that faith, reprogrammed everything else in his physical body. More importantly, guys, it gave people who thought they knew it all and knew what was possible a new vision in the medical community of what truly was possible. How many lives changed because of Morris's unwillingness to believe the experts? Who else? 1 minute, finish strong. Whoever it is.
That was a pretty strong finish.
Well, Don Hobbs, but you're here now to close it out.
No, I got suckered. Well, the power of the subconscious mind, since we're wrapping up this chapter, right? We're finishing this.
Yep.
Yeah. So the power of the subconscious mind, we create in our mind that we consciously create or subconsciously, unconsciously create. Either way, your choice. And I think that for each and every one of us, we have to decide, what do we envision? It's a constant, the visualization. Julianne just said visualization. We constantly got to be seeing what we are aiming at instead of looking at what we don't want. And this is a great place for us to remember that what you focus on is exactly what you create.
So hold up your cards, boys and girls, because this is what you should be focusing on. Your sheet of paper, your cards, what your plan is. Don, you have not been here for this.
Mm-mm.
I will have $98,150 per month revenue share by September 30th, 2027. I will give every day to 9 people dedicated to getting to 10 grand a month. I will spend all day, 6 days a week in service to them. By the way, that is expanding now. We're adding a larger mastermind on Fridays. Can't wait to share it with you guys in about a week and change. It is Monday. I will be doing some coaching today. As all of you know, I've got my full family here, plugging in for this, plugging in for my one-on-one coaching, and then plugging in with family the rest of the day.